There is a feeling that has haunted the human species since we first developed the capacity to look up. It is a subtle, gnawing sensation. The feeling of being watched. We build our cities, we fight our wars, we love, we die, and we do it all under the gaze of a single silent eye. The moon. For thousands of years, poets have written about its beauty. Sailors have navigated by its light. Farmers have planted by its cycles. We are taught from childhood that it is our companion, a natural satellite born from a chaotic collision billions of years ago, drifting peacefully in the void to keep us company. We are told it is a dead rock, a dusty, cratered wasteland of basalt and regolith. But what if we have been lied to? What if the object hanging in our night sky is not a rock at all? What if the craters are camouflage? What if the dust is merely a coating, designed to hide a hull of impenetrable metal? And most terrifying of all, what if its purpose is not to reflect the sun but to project a frequency? There is a theory that is whispered in the darkest corners of alternative history and astrophysics. It is a theory that connects the ancient stone tablets of Sumer to the seismic anomalies recorded by NASA. It suggests that the moon is an artifact, a construct, an ancient, terrifying megastructure that was towed into our orbit by an intelligence far older than humanity. The Zulu shamans call it the egg of the dragon. The Gnostics called it the watchtower. The Sumerians knew it as the fortress of the gods. They say it was placed here to stabilize the earth, yes, but they also say it was placed here to monitor the livestock, to monitor us. Tonight, we're going to peel back the layers of the lunar mystery. We're going to look at the mathematical impossibilities that define its orbit. We're going to listen to the ringing of the bell that terrified the Apollo scientists, and we're going to ask the question that no one in the mainstream dares to ask. Is the Earth a farm? Is the moon the fence? And when we die, does this machine recycle our souls to keep the engine running? Turn off the lights, let the noise of the modern world fade into silence. Forget what you were taught in school. We are travelling to the dark side of the moon. To understand the true nature of the moon, we must first strip away the romance and look at the cold, hard mathematics. In the universe, physics follows rules. Celestial bodies follow patterns. But our moon breaks almost every rule in the book. It is an anomaly so profound that even the most conservative astronomers have struggled to explain its existence for centuries. Let us begin with the size. In our solar system, moons are common. Jupiter has 79, Saturn has 82. But look at the ratio. The moons of Jupiter are tiny specks of dust compared to the massive gas giant they orbit. They are captured asteroids, debris, small rocks caught in a gravity well. Earth is different. Earth is a relatively small, rocky planet. Yet, our moon is colossal. It is 1/4 the size of the Earth itself. It is the largest moon in the solar system relative to its host planet. Astrophysically, this shouldn't happen. The Earth's gravity field is simply not strong enough to capture a celestial body of that mass as it drifts by. If a moon that size wandered into our neighbourhood, physics dictates two likely outcomes. It would crash into us, obliterating both worlds, or it would be flung out into deep space like a stone from a slingshot. But it didn't crash, and it didn't leave. It stopped. It settled into a perfect circular stationary orbit. An orbit so precise that it defies the chaotic nature of the early solar system. It is as if someone hit the brakes, as if someone parked it. And then there is the coincidence. This is the detail that keeps astronomers awake at night. The moon is 400 times smaller than the sun, but the moon is also precisely 400 times closer to the Earth than the sun. This geometric symmetry creates a visual impossibility. From our perspective on the surface of the Earth, the moon and the sun appear to be exactly the same size in the sky. This is the only reason we experience total solar eclipses. When the moon passes in front of the sun, it covers the solar disk perfectly, down to the millimeter, leaving only the fiery corona visible. No other planet in our solar system has a moon that does this. Isaac Asimov, the famous biochemist and science fiction writer, called this the sheerest stroke of luck. He wrote that there is no astronomical reason why the moon and the sun should fit so well. It is a 1 in a billion chance. But in engineering, we do not believe in 1 in a billion chances. We believe in calibration. If you find a disk that fits perfectly into a hole, you do not assume the wind blew it there. You assume it was measured. You assume it was cut. You assume it was placed. Now consider the movement. The moon behaves unlike any other natural satellite. It is tidally locked to the Earth. This means it rotates on its axis at the exact same speed that it orbits our planet. The synchronization is absolute. The result is that the moon never shows us its back. For millions of years, humanity has stared at the man in the moon. We have mapped every crater, every sea, every mountain on the near side. But the far side, the dark side, it remains hidden. It is always turned away from us, facing the deep black of the cosmos. Why? Is it just gravity, or is it a shield? If you were building a surveillance station or a command post, you would want the armoured side facing the open space to deflect asteroids, and the observation side facing the target. We know now, thanks to probes, that the two sides of the moon are radically different. The near side is covered in Maria, smooth, dark seas of frozen lava. It looks like a face that has been battered and patched. The far side is rugged, mountainous, and has almost no seas. The crust is thicker on the far side by dozens of miles. It is structurally lopsided. A natural planetary body formed from spinning dust and gravity should be uniform. It should be homogeneous. The moon is not. It is a sphere with a thick back and a thin front. It is designed like a helmet. Let us go deeper into the history. If the moon is natural, it should have been here since the beginning of the Earth, roughly 4.5 billion years ago. But human memory says otherwise. Across the ancient world, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, cultures share a specific unsettling tradition. They speak of a time before the moon. Aristotle, the great Greek philosopher, wrote about the Arcadians, the people of the highlands. He called them the Proselins. The word is Greek. Pro means before. Selene means moon. Those who were before the moon. Aristotle claimed that their civilization was older than the Greeks, older than the flood, dating back to an era when the night sky was black and empty of the white orb. Across the ocean, in the high Andes of South America, the indigenous tribes of Colombia speak of the same thing. Their oral traditions say that in the earliest times there was no moon in the heavens, and most famously the Zulu legends of South Africa, passed down by the Sanusi, the keepers of the secret knowledge, describe the arrival of the moon as a terrifying event. Credo Mutwa, the historic Zulu shaman, told the story. He said that the moon was not born here. He said it was brought here. The legend tells of two brothers, Wawan and Mpanku, who stole the egg of the great fire dragon and rolled it across the sky. They emptied out the yolk, the magma, making it hollow, and they placed it in orbit as a watchtower. The legend says that when the moon arrived, the Earth screamed. The planet's rotation slowed down. The climate shifted violently. The water vapor canopy that shielded the Earth collapsed, causing the Great Flood. Is it possible that these myths are not fairy tales? Is it possible that they are the traumatized memories of a species that witnessed a planetary engineering event? The arrival of a massive gravitational object into our orbit would indeed cause massive tsunamis, earthquakes, and floods. It would change the length of the day and the night. It fits the geological record of the catastrophe that ended the last ice age. This brings us to the Anunnaki. The Sumerian tablets, the oldest written records of humanity, describe the Anunnaki as those who from heaven to earth came. They came to mine gold. They came to build a colony. But a colony needs infrastructure. To run a planetary operation, you need a stable environment. You need predictable seasons for agriculture. You need tides to circulate the oceans and sift the minerals. Without the moon, the Earth's axis would wobble chaotically. The climate would be unstable. Life would be hard to manage. Did the Anunnaki tow the moon into place to terraform the Earth? Did they use their advanced gravitational technology to park this massive station in orbit, specifically to stabilize the planet for their arrival? If so, the moon is not a satellite. It is an anchor. It is the engine that drives the biological cycles of our world. The menstrual cycles of women, the breeding cycles of animals, the movement of the tides. Everything is tied to the rhythm of that white sphere. We are biologically synchronized to a machine. But if it is a machine, what is inside it? If the Zulu legends are right, and it is a hollow egg, then the interior must be vast. What kind of technology could hide inside a sphere that is 2,000 miles wide? Is it full of dusty corridors and abandoned machinery? Or is it still running? Is the hum that we hear in the silence of space the sound of engines that have never been turned off? In 1969, the scientists at NASA inadvertently put this theory to the test. They didn't use a drill. They used a hammer. And when they struck the surface of the moon with the force of a crashing rocket, The data they received sent a chill down their spines that is still felt today, because the moon didn't thud like a rock. It rang. It rang like a bell. In the world of science, data is king. Theories are just stories until they are tested. And on November the 20th, 1969, NASA conducted a test that was supposed to be routine, but ended up shattering our understanding of the solar system. The crew of Apollo 12 had just completed their mission. They were back in the command module preparing to return to Earth. But before they left the lunar orbit, they had one final task. They jettisoned the lunar module, the Intrepid. They aimed it at the surface of the moon. It was a controlled crash. The module, weighing over 2.5 tons, slammed into the lunar regolith at a speed of 3,700 miles per hour. The impact occurred about 40 miles away from the passive seismic experiment station, a sensitive seismometer the astronauts had placed on the ground days earlier. The scientists in Houston were watching the monitors. They expected a small thud. They expected the vibrations to dissipate into the soil within minutes, just as they do on Earth. When a meteor hits the Earth, the energy is absorbed by the dense layers of the crust and mantle. The signal dies quickly, but the moon did not behave like Earth. When the Intrepid hit, the seismographs went wild. The needle began to move, and it didn't stop. The moon began to vibrate. The shock waves built up to a peak, and then continued to reverberate for 55 minutes, almost an hour. Ken Johnson, a supervisor at the Data and Photo Control Department, later described the scene in Mission Control. The room was silent. People were staring at the data in disbelief. The moon rang like a bell, he said, and not just a small bell, a massive, hollow, metallic bell. This was scientifically impossible for a solid planetary body. A natural moon is made of rock, packed tight by gravity over billions of years. Rock does not ring. Rock absorbs sound. The only structure that rings for an hour is a hollow sphere made of rigid material, like a titanium church bell or a hull. But the scientists tried to rationalize it. They said, maybe it's just the dry soil, maybe the lack of water allows the waves to travel further. So they decided to do it again. They needed a bigger hammer. 5 months later, the Apollo 13 mission launched. Although the landing was aborted due to an oxygen tank explosion, the crew managed to guide the third stage of the Saturn V rocket, the S-4B booster, on a collision course with the moon. This object was massive. It weighed 15 tons. It hit the moon with the force of 11 tons of TNT. It struck the surface with devastating power. And this time, the moon didn't just ring for an hour. It rang for 3 hours and 20 minutes. The vibrations travelled deep into the lunar interior, down to a depth of 25 miles. And the data that came back terrified the geologists. The shockwaves travelled at speeds that were impossible for rock. They travelled at speeds associated with high-density metal, and there was no dampening. The signal just kept going, bouncing back and forth inside the moon, as if there was nothing in the centre to stop it, as if the centre was empty. Dr. Gordon MacDonald, a leading scientist at NASA in the 1960s, looked at the data and made a statement that is rarely quoted in textbooks. He said, "It would seem that the moon is more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere. Think about the implications of that sentence. A natural satellite cannot be hollow. Gravity pulls everything to the centre. A planet forms from dust clumping together. It becomes a solid ball. Nature does not build empty spheres. If the moon is hollow, it is not natural. If the moon is hollow, it is a construct. It is an artificial shell, built to protect something inside. And then there is the density problem. We know the size of the moon. We can measure its gravitational pull. When you divide the mass by the volume, you get the density. The density of the Earth is 5.5 grams per cubic centimetre. The density of the moon is only 3.34 grams per cubic centimetre. This is a massive discrepancy. It means the moon is significantly lighter than it should be for its size. If the moon were a solid rock ball, it would weigh much more. The only explanation for this missing mass is that there are vast caverns inside, or that the entire interior is a vacuum. Carl Sagan, the famous astronomer, wrote in his book Intelligent Life in the Universe, "A natural satellite cannot be a hollow object." He meant it as a way to debunk the theory. But logic works both ways. If a natural satellite cannot be hollow, and the moon is hollow, then the moon is not a natural satellite. So, if it is a shell, what is the shell made of? the Apollo astronauts brought back samples of lunar dust and rock. When scientists analysed these samples, they found anomalies that defied geological explanation. They found titanium, not just traces, but massive quantities. Some samples contain 10 times more titanium than the most titanium-rich rocks on Earth. Titanium is a rare, super-strong metal. We use it to build supersonic jets, submarines, and spacecraft hulls. It is the perfect material for building a structure that needs to withstand the rigours of space travel and meteor impacts. Why is the surface of the Moon covered in processed titanium? They also found uranium-236 and neptunium-237. These are radioactive isotopes that are not found in nature. They are the byproducts of nuclear reactors. How did nuclear waste get onto the surface of the Moon? Unless the Moon itself is a nuclear-powered vessel. In July 1970, two Soviet scientists from the Russian Academy of Sciences, Michael Vasin and Alexander Shcherbakov, published an article in Sputnik magazine. The title was, "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" This was not a tabloid. This was a state-sanctioned scientific publication. Vasin and Shcherbakov proposed the spaceship moon theory. They theorized that the Moon is a hollowed-out planetoid. They suggested that millions of years ago an advanced civilization, perhaps the Anunnaki, took a small planet or a large asteroid. They used high-energy lasers or boring machines to melt the interior. They reinforced the outer shell with a metallic framework, a skeleton of titanium and steel. They covered the metal hull with a layer of rocky slag and dust to camouflage it, to make it look like a natural object. They installed engines inside to navigate it through the cosmos, and they parked it here. This theory explains why the craters on the Moon are so strange. Look at the craters. Some are hundreds of miles wide. When an asteroid that big hits a planet, it should dig a hole dozens of miles deep. But on the Moon, even the biggest craters are incredibly shallow. The floor of the crater is often flat or even convex, bulging outward. Why? Because the asteroid is hitting the armor. It blasts away the dust layer, but it cannot penetrate the titanium hull beneath. The ring bell is the sound of the metal shell vibrating from the impact. The seas, Maria, are not lava from volcanoes. The Moon has no volcanoes. It is a dead rock. The Soviet scientists suggested that the lava is actually a composite material, a mixture of rocks and cement that was sprayed from the interior to patch the hull breaches after asteroid impacts, like putting Bondo on a damaged car. If Vasin and Shcherbakov are right, then we're not looking at a moon. We are looking at a world ship, a Noah's Ark of the stars. It arrived here in the distant past, towed across the galaxy by a civilization fleeing a dying world or expanding their empire. It arrived when humanity was still in its infancy, or perhaps it arrived to start humanity. The Sumerians say the Anunnaki came from the heavens, but maybe they didn't come from a distant planet called Nibiru that orbits the Sun every 3,600 years. Maybe Nibiru is not a planet. Maybe Nibiru is the Moon. Maybe the planet of the crossing is the ship that's parked right next to us, and the gods are simply the crew. But if the Moon is a ship and it is hollow, what is inside? Is it empty? Is it abandoned? Or is it still active? During the Apollo missions, the astronauts reported seeing transient lunar phenomena, TLP. Flashes of light, mists, glowing red spots appearing in the craters, strange geometric shapes moving across the surface. NASA dismissed these as gas venting, but a dead moon doesn't vent gas. A machine vents gas. A machine has lights, and a machine has a purpose. If the Anunnaki parked this Death Star in our orbit, they didn't do it for the view, they did it to build a cage. And in the next chapter, we will discover exactly how this cage works. We will explore the terrifying theory that the Moon is transmitting a frequency that keeps the human consciousness trapped in a loop of amnesia. If the Moon is indeed a hollow, artificial structure parked in a precise orbit, we are left with the most disturbing question of all. What is it doing? A spaceship of that size doesn't just sit there. It consumes energy. It performs a function. For decades, we have assumed its function is merely gravitational, to pull the tides and stabilize the axis. But new theories suggest that the Moon is not just a passive weight. It is an active broadcaster. It is a machine that hums, and the song it sings is keeping us asleep. To understand this, we must look at the concept of the frequency fence. We know that the Earth is surrounded by the Van Allen radiation belts, zones of energetic charged particles captured by Earth's magnetic field. In 2012, NASA launched the Van Allen probes to study these belts. What they found was baffling. They discovered a sharp, impenetrable barrier within the belts that blocks ultra-relativistic electrons from reaching Earth. Daniel Baker, the lead scientist from the University of Colorado Boulder, compared it to the force fields in science fiction. He said, "It's almost like these electrons are running into a glass wall in space. NASA calls it a shield that protects us from solar radiation, but Gnostic texts written 2,000 years ago describe it differently. They called it the firmament, the veil. They believed that the Earth was cut off from the pleroma, the true divine universe, by a barrier set up by the archons. The archons were the rulers of this material realm, they were the jailers, and their watchtower was the moon. If we look at the physics of the moon, it behaves exactly like a directional antenna. Because it is tidally locked, the same face is always pointed at Earth. In radio astronomy, a satellite dish must be pointed directly at the receiver to transmit a clear signal. The moon has been pointing at us for millions of years. What if the craters on the near side, the shallow flat craters that look like radar dishes, are exactly that? What if the moon is broadcasting a low-frequency electromagnetic signal that envelops the planet? We know that the human brain operates on frequencies. Alpha waves, 8 to 12 Hz, are for relaxation. Beta waves, 12 to 30 Hz, are for active thinking. Theta waves, 4 to 8 Hz, are for dreaming. But there is a specific frequency range that induces fear, anxiety, and submission. Some researchers suggest that the moon matrix is a signal designed to jam our pineal gland, our third eye. It is a frequency that keeps us locked in the lower chakras, focused on survival, focused on conflict, focused on materialism. It blocks our connection to the wider cosmic internet. It is the reason why humans feel spiritually isolated. We are trying to tune into the universe, but there is a massive jamming station orbiting right next to us. This theory aligns with the darkest aspect of the Gnostic texts, the harvest. The Gnostics believed that the archons, or the Anunnaki, do not eat physical food. They are non-biological entities. They feed on energy, specifically the energy of human emotion. They called it loosh. Negative emotions, fear, anger, grief, lust, produce a heavy, dense vibration. To a high-dimensional entity, this vibration is sustenance. If the Earth is a farm, then wars, plagues, and catastrophes are not accidents. They are feeding frenzies, and the moon is the amplifier. We know that during a full moon, crime rates spike. Psychids fill up. The word lunatic comes from lunar. Police departments around the world admit that the moon effect is real. Science says it is just the extra light keeping people awake. But does light make people murder? Does light make people riot? Or is the moon turning up the volume? Is it increasing the intensity of the broadcast, triggering the unstable minds of the population to release more loosh for the invisible masters? But the most terrifying function of the moon trap is not what happens while we are alive. It is what happens when we die. For centuries, near-death experiencers, NDEs, have reported a strikingly similar vision. They float out of their bodies. They see a tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel there is a brilliant, beautiful white light. They feel an overwhelming sense of love and peace. They meet their deceased relatives or religious figures, Jesus, Buddha, angels. These figures tell them, "It is not your time. You have more to learn. You must go back." Or, if they have truly died, they are told, "Come into the light to be cleansed." We are taught that this is heaven, but the soul trap theory asks a simple, chilling question. Why would an infinite, omnipotent God need a tunnel? Why does the afterlife look like a processing center? The theory suggests that the white light is not the entrance to heaven. It is the mouth of the moon. It is a technological lure, like a bug zapper for the soul. The Anunnaki know that the human spirit is powerful. It is infinite. If it remembers who it is, it will simply fly away, back to the source. So they built a trap. They use the images of our loved ones, holographic projections read from our own minds, to lure us in. And once we enter the light, the white begins. The review of life that people describe, where they see their life flash before their eyes, is a data download. The archons review the file. They point out the karmic debts. You hurt this person, they say. You failed this mission. You must return to Earth to fix it. Guilt, the ultimate weapon. The soul, convinced it is flawed, agrees to the contract, agrees to be recycled. The memory is erased. the veil of forgetfulness is reapplied, and the soul is shot back down the gravity well into a new body to start the cycle of suffering and energy production all over again. This is the wheel of samsara, and the moon is the hub of the wheel. It explains why we arrive on Earth with no memory. We are a species with amnesia. We have to relearn how to walk, how to talk, how to love in every single lifetime. Imagine a scientist who works for 50 years, makes a breakthrough, and then is lobotomized and forced to start over in kindergarten. That is the human condition. We never graduate, we just repeat the grade, and the Anunnaki sit in their lunar watchtower, watching the livestock graze, ensuring that the fence holds firm, but the fence is not perfect. The fact that we are talking about it means the signal is weakening. The fact that you are listening to this means you're beginning to remember. The Gnostics said that knowledge, gnosis, is the key to the cage. If you know the light is a trap, you don't have to go into it. You can turn around, you can look at the void, and you can will yourself to the true stars. But to do that, you must first understand the biology of the lock. You must understand how they modified our bodies to receive this signal. Because the trap is not just in the sky, it is in your blood. If the moon is a broadcasting station, sending out a frequency designed to limit human consciousness, then there must be a receiver. A radio signal is useless without a radio, and that receiver is you. Specifically, it is the biological suit you're wearing right now. To understand how the Anunnaki trap works, we have to look away from the sky and look into the microscope. We have to look at the code of life itself. For centuries, scientists have searched for the missing link in the fossil record. They have looked for the bone that connects the primitive ape to the modern human. They have found Australopithecus, they have found Homo erectus, but they have never found the smooth transition. There is always a gap. A sudden, inexplicable jump where the brain size explodes, the fur disappears, and the capacity for complex language emerges. This jump happened around 200,000 years ago. In geological time, that is a finger snap. Evolution does not snap its fingers. Evolution crawls, unless it was given a push. The theory of the Anunnaki intervention suggests that the missing link is not a bone, it is a splice. The evidence is written in the ink of our own DNA. In 2005, the Chimpanzee Genome Project finished sequencing the DNA of our closest relative. They compared it to the human genome. The results were 98.8% identical. But that 1.2% difference is the difference between a creature that sits in a zoo and a creature that builds the zoo. And deep inside that difference lies a structural anomaly that Darwinian evolution cannot easily explain. It is called human chromosome 2. Here is the math. All great apes, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans have 24 pairs of chromosomes. Humans have 23 pairs. If we share a common ancestor, where did the missing pair go? If a primate loses a chromosome, the result is usually fatal, or the offspring is born with severe defects and sterility. We didn't lose it, we fused it. When scientists looked closely at human chromosome 2, they found something shocking. It is a patchwork. It is made of two ancestral ape chromosomes, let's call them 2A and 2B, glued together end to end. How do we know? Because of the telomeres. Telomeres are the protective caps at the ends of a chromosome, like the plastic tips on a shoelace. They're only supposed to be at the ends, but in human chromosome 2, we find a band of telomere DNA right in the middle. It is like finding a car with a front bumper welded into the back seat. And we find two centromeres, the central knot of the chromosome, one active and one vestigial, turned off. Nature rarely does this. Accidental chromosomal fusion usually results in a genetic dead end. But in the case of humans, this fusion created a superspecies. It coincided exactly with the sudden emergence of Homo sapiens. Is it a coincidence? Or is it a signature? The Sumerian texts describe Enki and his half-sister Ninmah working in the Bit Shimti, the house of fashioning. They describe trial and error. They describe creating beings that couldn't breathe, beings with broken ribs, and finally, they describe the perfect man, the Adamu. Did Enki take the 24 chromosomes of the wild hominid and fuse them with the essence of the gods to create the 23 chromosome hybrid? Is chromosome 2 the mark of the maker? But why fuse it? Why not just give us 24 superchromosomes? The frequency fence theory suggests that the fusion was a limiting mechanism. It was a way to cap our potential. Think of a radio that can pick up every station, AM, FM, shortwave, cosmic background. Now, imagine the engineer wants you to hear only one station, the station of obedience, the station of fear. So he solders two wires together. He cuts the connection to the higher frequencies. He tunes the hardware to the specific frequency of the moon. This is the genetic lock. By fusing the chromosomes, the Anunnaki may have disconnected us from the universal internet, the telepathic network that connects all living things. They locked us into the five-sense reality. We can see the wall, we can hear the thunder, we can taste the fruit, but we cannot feel the intent of the person standing next to us. We cannot see the energy grid of the earth. We are isolated. And isolation makes a worker dependent on the master. And then there is the junk DNA. For decades, geneticists called the non-coding regions of our DNA junk, because they didn't seem to make proteins. It makes up a staggering 97% of our genome. Recent studies suggest this isn't junk at all. It is a control panel. It regulates how the other 3% behaves. Some theorists believe this junk DNA contains the dormant code of our true potential, the telepathy, the rapid healing, the extreme longevity of the patriarchs who lived for 900 years. It is all there, written in the A, C, T, and G. But it has been switched to off. It is encrypted, and the key to decrypting it is blocked by the signal from the moon. The moon keeps the vibration low, preventing the activation of these dormant genes. It keeps us in survival mode, fight or flight, which produces the exact chemical cocktail, cortisol, adrenaline, that the archons feed upon. We are walking anomalies. We are the only species on Earth that is not perfectly adapted to its environment. We get back pain from walking upright because our spine is a bridge turned into a pillar. We get sunburned because we lost our fur too quickly. We have heads too big for our mothers' pelvises, making childbirth deadly without assistance. We look less like a product of slow, refining evolution and more like a product of a rush job. We look like a prototype that was released before the testing phase was over. Or perhaps the flaws are features. Perhaps the fragility of the human body is designed to keep us focused on physical survival, distracting us from our spiritual power. The Gnostics said that the divine spark is trapped in matter. The biological suit is the trap. The moon is the guard tower, and the DNA is the shackles. But shackles can be broken. If the lock is genetic, then the key is epigenetic. We know now that our environment, our thoughts, and our emotions can change how our genes express themselves. We can turn genes on and off. And if we can raise our internal frequency above the broadcast of the moon, if we can bypass the jammer, then the junk DNA might start to wake up. The fusion might become a bridge instead of a wall, and the prisoner might realize that the cell door has been unlocked the entire time. If the Earth is a farm and the moon is the fence, then the history of human spirituality is actually the history of a prison break. For thousands of years, there have been individuals who realized that the game was rigged. They realized that the gods were not benevolent parents, but hungry wardens. These individuals, shamans, yogis, Gnostics, did not form religions. Religions are often part of the control grid, designed to keep us on our knees, waiting for a savior who never comes. Instead, they formed mystery schools, the Brotherhood of the Snake, the Essenes, the Tibetan monks of the Diamond Vehicle. Their goal was not worship, it was liberation. They sought the back door to the simulation. The Gnostics were very specific about how to escape the moon trap. They taught that when you die, you must not be seduced by the familiar images of the afterlife. You must not be tricked by the archons masquerading as angels. In the Pistis Sophia, a Gnostic text discovered in Egypt, it describes the soul's journey past the watchtowers of the planets. The soul must know the passwords. These passwords are frequencies. They are states of consciousness that allow the soul to vibrate higher than the trap. If the moon broadcasts a signal of fear and guilt, a heavy, dense vibration, then the only way to pass through the net is to become lighter than the net. This is the ancient Egyptian concept of weighing the heart. In the Hall of Maat, the heart of the deceased is weighed against a feather. If the heart is heavy with guilt, regret, and attachment to the material world, it is eaten by Amit, the recycler. The soul is sent back. But if the heart is light as a feather, filled with love, truth, and attachment, it is allowed to pass. It exits the solar system and returns to the stars, to the true Orion. So, how do we make the heart light while we're still alive? How do we hack the genetic lock in our DNA? The ancients used sound. They understood the science of cymatics long before we did. If you place sand on a metal plate and play a frequency, the sand arranges itself into complex geometric patterns. Sound creates form. Sound organizes matter. The Anunnaki may have used sound to fuse our chromosomes and limit our perception, but we can use sound to undo it. This is the secret behind the Gregorian chants, the Tibetan Om, and the solfeggio frequencies. The frequency of 528 Hz, for example, is known by geneticists to assist in DNA repair. It is the miracle tone. When monks chant for hours, they are not just singing, they are tuning their biological instrument. They are raising the vibration of their water molecules and their DNA to a pitch that creates a carrier wave, a signal strong enough to punch through the static of the moon. We see evidence of this sonic technology in the megalithic structures themselves. The King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid of Giza is built of massive granite blocks. Granite is rich in quartz crystal. When you strike the coffer in the King's Chamber, it rings at a specific frequency, 438 Hz. This chamber was not a tomb, it was an ascension machine. The initiate would lie in the coffer. The priest would chant specific tones. The granite would resonate, creating a piezoelectric field. This field would overload the sensory inputs of the body, forcing the consciousness to pop out of the five-sense reality. It was a dry run for death. It was training for the soul to navigate the astral plane without getting caught in the moon's gravity well. And then there is the ultimate escape, the rainbow body. In the Dzogchen tradition of Tibet, it is said that a master who has fully realized the illusory nature of this reality can dissolve their physical body into pure light at the moment of death. They leave behind only hair and nails. The rest of the mass is converted into energy. This is not a metaphor. There are documented cases of this phenomenon occurring as recently as the 20th century. By raising their internal frequency to the level of gamma waves, hyperfocus and compassion, they literally burn through the genetic lock. They bypass the recycling process entirely. They do not go to the moon. They do not go to the light. They become the light. They have hacked the simulation from the inside. The archons feed on Lush, the energy of suffering. Fear, anger, jealousy, and despair are low-frequency waves. They are the food of the moon. When we watch the news and feel terrified, we are feeding the system. When we fight wars over resources, we are feeding the system. But the one thing the system cannot digest is love. True, unconditional love, joy, gratitude, creativity. These are high-frequency waves. They are toxic to the archons. This is why the golden rule is found in every religion. Love thy neighbour. It wasn't a moral instruction. It was a strategic one. If the human race could collectively raise its vibration into the frequency of love, the moon matrix would starve, the signal would fail, the fence would collapse. The Anunnaki built a sophisticated trap. They used gravity, genetics, and electromagnetism to keep us here. But they made one mistake. They left the junk DNA intact. They turned it off, but they didn't delete it. And they underestimated the power of the consciousness that inhabits these bodies. We are not just the livestock, we are the sleeper agents, and every time you choose love over fear, every time you create something beautiful, every time you question the official story, you're rattling the bars of the cage, you're remembering the password. The Zulu shamans call the moon the egg of the dragon. In China, the eclipse is caused by a dragon eating the moon. In the Garden of Eden, the knowledge of good and evil is offered by a serpent. Why is the image of the reptile so deeply embedded in human mythology? Why do cultures that never met, from the Aztecs to the Hindus, worship feathered serpents and nagas? Is it just a primal fear of snakes, or is it a memory of our architects? To understand the connection between the moon and the serpent, we don't need to look at statues, we need to look inside our own skulls. Neuroscientists have known for decades that the human brain is not one organ, but three. It is a triune brain, built in layers over millions of years of evolution. The top layer is the neocortex. This is the human brain. It handles logic, language, art, and philosophy. It is the part of you that is listening to this documentary. The middle layer is the limbic system. This is the mammalian brain. It handles emotion, bonding, and love. But deep underneath, at the very top of the spinal cord, sits the oldest and most primitive structure of all, the basal ganglia and the brainstem. Scientists call it the R complex, the reptilian complex. This is not a metaphor. It is physically identical to the brain of a lizard or a crocodile. It does not think. It does not feel. It only reacts. It controls the 4 F's: feeding, fighting, fleeing, and reproduction. It is the seat of aggression, dominance, territoriality, and ritualistic behavior. When a soldier marches in lockstep, that is the R complex. When a mob riots in the street, that is the R complex overriding the neocortex. When you feel a sudden, irrational fear that makes your heart race, that is the lizard taking the wheel. Now let's go back to the moon. If the moon is broadcasting a frequency fence, what part of the brain is it targeting? It isn't targeting your neocortex. The Anunnaki don't care about your philosophy. They care about your labour, and they care about your louche, emotional energy. The theory suggests that the lunar frequency is tuned specifically to stimulate the reptilian brain. It keeps the R complex in a state of chronic, low-level activation. We call it stress. We call it anxiety, but it is actually a survival signal. It keeps us locked in the lower chakras, obsessed with safety, obsessed with hierarchy, obsessed with us versus them. It prevents the energy from rising up the spine to the pineal gland. It keeps us grounded. It keeps us heavy. Look at the symbol of modern medicine, the caduceus. 2 snakes winding around a winged staff. We are told it represents healing. But in Sumerian iconography, this was the symbol of Enki, the geneticist. It represents the double helix of DNA, but it also represents the kundalini energy rising up the spine. The snakes are the current. The wings at the top are the liberated consciousness, the neocortex/pineal gland. But notice, the snakes are intertwined. They are crossing over. They are the genetic lock. If the energy stays trapped in the lower coils in the reptilian brain, you remain a worker bee. You remain a biological machine that eats, sleeps, and breeds. Only when the energy rises past the snakes, past the R complex, do you get the wings. You get enlightenment. The Anunnaki knew that the R complex was the perfect control panel. A reptile is easy to program. It follows simple rules. Obey the strongest. Defend the territory. Eat the weak. Look at our society. We build skyscrapers, but we still organize ourselves like lizards. We have alphas. We have borders. We hoard resources while others starve. We are high-tech reptiles. This is not an accident. This is the software running on the hardware. And the moon is the Wi-Fi router that keeps the software updating. Ancient cultures tried to warn us. The Gnostics described the archons as having the face of a lion and the body of a serpent. The Nagas of India were half human, half cobra beings who lived underground and guarded great treasures. The Bible says the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. Subtle means cunning. It means hidden. The reptilian influence is not an alien invasion fleet landing on the White House lawn. It is the voice in your head that tells you to be afraid. It is the impulse that tells you to buy things you don't need to impress people you don't like. It is the cold, calculating part of the human psyche that lacks empathy. That is the alien inside us. And as long as the moon is in the sky, vibrating at its specific frequency, the dragon in the basement of your brain will never truly sleep. If you find a speaker in a room playing music you don't like, you can smash the speaker. But the music doesn't stop, it just stops coming out of that box. The signal is still in the air, because the speaker is not the source. The speaker is just the relay. If the moon is an artificial satellite broadcasting a frequency that locks human consciousness into a state of fear and survival, where is the broadcast coming from? Who is the DJ? To answer this, we must look further out into the dark, past the asteroid belt, to the second giant of our solar system, Saturn. For thousands of years, Saturn has been the most feared and revered object in the heavens. In Rome, he was the god of agriculture but also of limits. In Greece, he was Cronus, the titan who ate his own children to prevent them from surpassing him. He is Father Time, the grim reaper with his scythe. He is the lord of the harvest. Why is the planet of time and death also the planet associated with the golden age of the Anunnaki? Because the theory suggests that Saturn is the CPU. It is the central processing unit of the simulation we call reality. In 1980, the Voyager 1 probe flew past Saturn and sent back images that baffled scientists. And in 2006, the Cassini spacecraft confirmed it. There is a storm on the North Pole of Saturn, but it is not a circle, like a hurricane on Earth. It is not a spiral. It is a perfect hexagon. It is wider than 2 Earths. The sides are perfectly straight. The angles are precise. Nature does not do straight lines on a planetary scale. Fluid dynamics do not create polygons in gas giants, unless there is a standing wave. In the science of cymatics, if you play a specific sound frequency into a dish of water or sand, the material will organize itself into geometric shapes. A hexagon is the shape created by a specific low-frequency hum. This suggests that Saturn is not just a ball of gas, it is vibrating. It is a colossal sonic weapon. NASA has recorded the radio emissions coming from Saturn. They sound like screaming. They sound like a ghostly choir. And the rings? Some researchers believe the rings are not debris. They are the transmitter coils. They are the broadcast antenna that amplifies the signal generated by the hexagon and beams it out into the solar system. So here is the architecture of the trap. Saturn, the source, generates the waveform of time and restriction. The Moon, the amplifier, intercepts this signal, modulates it for the Earth, and beams it directly at us. The Earth, the receiver, is the screen where the movie plays. This is the Saturn-Moon matrix. We are living in a hologram projected by a frequency that originates 900 million miles away. This explains why the symbol of Saturn, the black cube, is worshipped in almost every religion on Earth, often unknowingly. A hexagon is simply a 2D representation of a 3D cube. If you look at a cube from the corner, you see a hexagon. The cube represents the box of material reality, the prison of 3 dimensions. The Kaaba in Mecca is a black cube. The tefillin worn by Jewish men are black cubes containing the law. The cross is an unfolded cube. We graduate in a square hat, mortarboard. We live in box houses. We work in cubicles. We are obsessed with the cube because the cube is the frequency of our reality. It is the frequency of Enlil, the frequency of law, order, and limitation. The Anunnaki understood this physics. They didn't create the universe, but they hacked the solar system to create a sub-reality, a closed loop. By linking Saturn and the Moon, they created a time loop. Saturn is Chronos, time. The Moon is the marker of cycles, months. Together they create the illusion of linear time. We are born, we age, we die. We are eaten by time, just as Cronus ate his children. But consciousness is timeless. The soul is eternal. So to keep an eternal being trapped in a box, you have to convince it that time is real. You have to convince it that death is the end, and you do that by bombarding it with a frequency that keeps it focused on the ticking clock. This is why the elite, the Brotherhood of Saturn, are obsessed with astrology and alignment. They know when the signal is strongest. They perform their rituals when Saturn and the Moon are in specific geometric relationships. They're essentially adjusting the antenna. They're ensuring that the broadcast of fear remains uninterrupted. But if Saturn is the machine, then the rings are the fence. Norman Berggren, a scientist who worked at NASA Ames Research Center, wrote a book called Ringmakers of Saturn. He analyzed photos from the Voyager missions and claimed to see massive cylindrical objects, thousands of miles long, parked inside the rings. He called them EMVs, electromagnetic vehicles. He believed the rings were being made, that they were an artificial construct being continuously repaired by these massive ships. Is it possible that the rings of Saturn are the physical boundary of our simulation, the firewall, and that everything inside the orbit of Saturn is the quarantine zone? The Gnostics said that to escape, the soul must pass the 7 spheres. The final sphere, the hardest gatekeeper, was always Saturn. He is the dweller on the threshold. He demands the toll. He weighs the karma. But the secret they taught was that Saturn has no power over a sovereign being. He only has power over those who believe in the illusion of time. If you realize that the past and future are just radio stations and that you can switch them off, the cube opens, the hexagon dissolves, and the signal stops. But to do that, you have to wake up from the deepest layer of the program. You have to realize that the world you see with your eyes, the solid 3D world of chairs and tables and mountains, is not real. It is a decode. Your brain is decoding the signal from the Moon. And in the next chapter, we will explore the terrifying possibility that our entire history, our wars, our empires, our catastrophes, are just a script running on the Saturn mainframe. We will ask, is history repeating itself? Or are we just replaying the same level of the game? If you are trapped in a room, you can see the walls, you can touch the door. You know you are a prisoner. But what if the prison is not made of walls? What if the prison is made of time? We are taught in school that time is an arrow. It shoots forward from the past through the present into the future. We are told that history is a straight line of progress, from the cave to the hut to the skyscraper to the stars. We believe we are the first advanced civilization on Earth. We believe we are the apex. But the ancients didn't see time as an arrow. To the Sumerians, the Maya, the Vedics and the Greeks, time was a wheel. It was a circle. And just like a wheel, it turns. It goes up and it goes down. Civilizations rise, they flower, they decay. And then they are wiped out. They called this the Great Year. The mechanism of this clock is astronomical. It is called the precession of the equinoxes. The Earth wobbles on its axis like a spinning top. It takes roughly 25,920 years to complete one full wobble. As it wobbles, the backdrop of the stars changes. The sun rises in a different constellation every 2,160 years. We move from the age of the lion, Leo, to the bull, Taurus, to the ram, Aries, to the fish, Pisces. We are now entering the age of Aquarius. The ancients believed that this wobble was not just a physical motion, it was a spiritual barometer. It determined the Yuga, the age of consciousness. In the Golden Age, Satya Yuga, the Earth is aligned with the galactic center. Consciousness is high. We are telepathic. We live for thousands of years. We are gods. But as the wheel turns, we move away from the light. We descend into the Silver Age, then the Bronze Age, and finally we hit the bottom of the cycle, the Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, the Age of Darkness. This is where we are now. It is the age of materialism, war, short lifespans, and spiritual amnesia. It is the age where we think we are just bodies. But here is the terrifying part of the theory. The Great Year doesn't just end, it resets. The transition from one age to the next is often marked by cataclysm, fire, flood, ice, the cleaner. The theory suggests that the Anunnaki, or the intelligence behind the Saturn-Moon matrix, use these cycles to reboot the system. Just like a computer slows down when the cache is full of junk data, the simulation of Earth gets cluttered. It gets cluttered with too much karma, too much trauma, too much noise, and perhaps too much knowledge. When the human population becomes too advanced, when we start to rediscover the technologies of the past, when we start to unlock the DNA, the system crashes, and the reset happens. We see the evidence of previous crashes everywhere. We see the ruins of Pumapunku, with their precision-drilled andesite blocks, scattered like toys by a massive tidal wave. We see the Sphinx eroded by thousands of years of heavy rain in a desert that hasn't seen rain for 5,000 years. We see the vitrified forts of Scotland, where stone walls were melted by intense heat. These are not the works of primitives. These are the debris of the previous level. We are walking on the bones of giants. We are likely the 5th or 6th attempt at civilization on this planet. And every time we get close to the truth, the clock strikes 12. This explains the Mandela effect. The feeling that reality is shifting. The feeling of déjà vu. Have you ever looked at the news and felt like you've seen this script before? A plague, a war in the Middle East, a collapse of the banking system. Maybe you have seen it before. Maybe your soul remembers the last time we were here. The last time Atlantis fell. The last time the Tower of Babel was struck down. We're trapped in a time loop. We are reenacting the same drama over and over again with different costumes and different names. Napoleon is just Alexander. Alexander is just Gilgamesh. The actors change, but the play remains the same, and the director sits in the moon, watching the show, feeding on the repetitive energy of our struggle. Why would they do this? Why keep us in a loop? Because a loop is predictable. If you know that every 2,160 years the consciousness will shift, you can prepare. You can rewrite the holy books. You can change the currency. You can introduce a new savior or a new enemy. You can harvest the energy of the collapse and then harvest the energy of the rebuild. It is the ultimate renewable resource. The Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, is the symbol of this trap. It represents the infinite cycle of destruction and creation. But if you look closely at the symbol, the snake is not growing. It is just eating itself. It is a closed system. Entropy. We are not evolving. We are recycling. But the loop has a weakness. The reset is not instant. There is a window of opportunity, a twilight zone between the ages. We are in that window right now. The end of days is not the end of the world. It is the end of the simulation cycle. The magnetic field is weakening, the poles are shifting, the sun is changing colour, the firmament is thinning. This is why so many people are waking up. The signal from Saturn is glitching. The jammer on the moon is fluctuating. We're starting to remember previous timelines. We're starting to see the code. The Anunnaki are terrified of this moment, because if we wake up before the reset, if we remember who we are before the flood washes away the memory, we can break the wheel, we can step off the track, we can choose a timeline where the hammer doesn't fall. But to do that, we have to stop playing the game. We have to stop reacting to the script. If the script says war, and we choose peace, the program errors. If the script says fear, and we choose love, the program glitches. We are the glitch. We are the variables that the Anunnaki equation couldn't predict. They accounted for our greed. They accounted for our anger. But they didn't account for our ability to imagine a world that doesn't exist yet. In every ancient culture, the story ends the same way. For thousands of years, the gods walked among us. They built the ziggurats. They taught us agriculture. They fought their wars in the skies. And then, silence. Around 1000 BC, the age of miracles stopped. The direct communication ceased. The gods withdrew into the clouds, or into the mountains, or into the depths of the ocean. Historians say this was simply the evolution of religion. We moved from mythology to philosophy. But the Anunnaki theory suggests a different reason. They didn't leave the planet, they went into stasis. Think about the biology of an advanced species. If you live for thousands of years, time is different for you. If the Earth enters a hostile cycle, the Iron Age, the Kali Yuga, where the cosmic energy is low and the population is aggressive, why would you stay awake? Why would you endure the noise of a primitive civilization? You wouldn't. You would set the autopilot. You would turn on the moon matrix to manage the farm, and you would go to sleep. You would enter a state of biostasis or somatoi, a deep hibernation-like trance used by Vedic yogis, and perhaps by the Anunnaki themselves. You would lock yourself in a sarcophagus made of gold and crystal, shielded from the radiation of the sun, and wait for the alarm clock to ring. Where would you hide these chambers? You would hide them in the places humans cannot reach, in the voids beneath the Great Pyramids, inside the hollow mountains of the Andes, and most importantly under the ice of Antarctica. Antarctica is the only continent on Earth that is strictly off-limits to civilians. The Antarctic Treaty, signed by all major nations, forbids independent exploration. It forbids mining. It forbids military activity. Why? Is it really to protect the penguins? Or is it to protect what lies beneath the 2-mile-thick sheet of ice? We know that Antarctica was not always frozen. The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 from much older source maps, shows the coastline of Queen Maud Land without ice. It shows rivers. It shows mountains. This suggests that whoever drew the original map saw Antarctica as a habitable continent. Perhaps the home continent. If the Anunnaki established their main base there, and then a cataclysm, a pole shift, flash-frozen the continent, their cities would be preserved perfectly, not destroyed, preserved. Intact skyscrapers, intact libraries, intact laboratories, and intact sleepers. In recent years, whistleblowers have emerged claiming that anomalies have been found under the ice. They speak of massive electromagnetic signatures. They speak of the Vista structure, a ruin so large it can be seen from space if you know where to look. Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut, visited Antarctica in 2016. He had to be medically evacuated. Before he left, he allegedly tweeted a picture of a pyramid-like mountain with the caption, "We are all in danger. It is evil itself." The tweet was deleted. The account was scrubbed. Was it a hoax? Or did he see something that terrified a man who had walked on the moon? Did he see the Watchers waking up? And then there is the Middle East, the cradle of civilization, Sumer, Babylon, Iraq. In 2003, the frantic rush to invade Iraq was officially about weapons of mass destruction, but none were found. What was found was the National Museum of Iraq. It was one of the first sites secured by US troops, but they didn't protect it. They allowed it to be looted. Thousands of priceless tablets, cylinder seals, and artifacts related to the Anunnaki disappeared into the black market. Why? Rumors persist that the real target was not oil and not nuclear weapons. The target was a stasis chamber, specifically the tomb of Gilgamesh. In April 2003, archaeologists claimed to have found the tomb of the legendary king under the Euphrates riverbed. They described a highly advanced structure. And then the war started. The site was cordoned off. The reports vanished. Did they find a sleeper? Did they find a being in a state of suspended animation, surrounded by technology that looked like magic? And did they try to wake him up? The concept of the return is embedded in our DNA. The Christians wait for the second coming. The Jews wait for the Messiah. The Muslims wait for the Mahdi. The Buddhists wait for Maitreya. We are all waiting for the king to return and restore order. But be careful what you wish for. If the Anunnaki are real, their return is not a spiritual event. It is a management audit. The landlord is coming back to inspect the property. And if the property, the earth, is damaged, if the livestock, humanity, is unruly, the consequences could be severe. There is a disturbing theory that the global warming we are experiencing is not just about CO2. It is about the frequency rising. The earth is heating up from the inside. The ice is melting. Why? To unfreeze the sleepers. The great year is turning. The moon's signal is changing. The alarm clock has gone off. We are seeing the signs. The increase in UFO sightings, UAP, the disclosure by the Pentagon, the rush to return to the moon. The elites know something is coming. They are building bunkers in New Zealand. They are building seed vaults in Svalbard. They are preparing for the event. Is the event a war, or is it a reunion? Are the gods about to open their eyes? And when they look at us, will they see their children? Or will they see a failed experiment that needs to be reset one last time? If the earth is a prison, and the moon is the guard tower, then we must ask, are all the guards on the same side? History is rarely black and white. Even in the darkest regimes, there are defectors, there are whistleblowers, there are those who realize that the system is unjust. The Sumerian texts are very clear on this point. The Anunnaki were not a monolith. They were a divided house. They were ruled by a council, but the real power struggle was between two brothers, two ideologies, two different visions for the destiny of the human race. On one side there was Enlil, the commander, the lord of the air, the god of order, hierarchy and storms. Enlil viewed humans as tools. We were created to work the mines, to build the temples and to serve the gods. Nothing more. He was the one who grew tired of the noise of humanity. He was the one who ordered the great flood to wipe us out when our numbers became too great. He is the archetype of the strict, punishing Father God found in the Old Testament, the God who demands obedience, the God who says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." Enlil represents the control grid. He represents the moon matrix, the Saturnian system of time and debt, and the suppression of higher consciousness. On the other side, there was Enki, the scientist, the lord of the earth, Ki, the geneticist. Enki was the one who found the hominids. He was the one who spliced the genes. He was the one who created the Adamu. But unlike his brother, Enki fell in love with his creation. He saw the spark of the divine in us. He saw that we had the potential to become more than just slaves. We had the potential to become gods ourselves. Enki is the archetype of the rebel, the trickster, the teacher. He is Prometheus, stealing fire from Olympus to give to the freezing humans. He is the serpent in the Garden of Eden whispering to Eve, "Eat the fruit. You will not die. Your eyes will be opened." While Enlil wanted to keep us naked and ignorant in the garden, Enki wanted to give us the codes of civilization, writing, mathematics, astronomy, magic. This ancient civil war, the war between control, Enlil, and freedom, Enki, is the engine of human history. The flood was the first major battle. Enlil tried to hit the reset button. Enki betrayed his brother and gave the plans for the ark to Ziusudra, Noah, saving the human genetic stock. The Tower of Babel was the second battle. Humans, united by a single language and high technology, likely given by Enki's faction, tried to reach the heavens. Enlil saw this as a threat. He came down, confused our languages, and scattered us. He initiated the divide and conquer strategy that rules our world to this day. But the war didn't stop in Babylon. It went underground. It became the war of the secret societies. Throughout history, there have been groups dedicated to preserving the hidden knowledge, gnosis, of Enki against the dogmatic, oppressive rule of the Enlilite priesthoods. The Brotherhood of the Snake, the Essenes, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons. These groups were originally founded to protect the flame of knowledge. They taught the secrets of sacred geometry. They taught the truth about the moon and the stars, They taught that the human soul is immortal and sovereign, but power corrupts. Over thousands of years, many of these societies were infiltrated. They were turned. The Illuminati, as we call them today, are often accused of being Enlilites, worshipping the structure of power, the pyramid of control, and the all-seeing eye of the Moon/Saturn system. But the true resistance still exists. It exists in the artists, the inventors, the rebels who refuse to comply. Look at Akhenaten, the pharaoh of Egypt. He tried to abolish the pantheon of gods, the Enlilite control system, and return to the worship of the Aten, the single solar disk, the light. He moved the capital. He changed the art. He tried to liberate the minds of his people, and he was erased. The priesthoods of Amun, the Hidden One, assassinated him, destroyed his city, and chiseled his name off the monuments. They restored the old gods. They restored the fear. Look at Nikola Tesla. He tried to give the world free energy. He wanted to tap into the ether, the infinite energy field of the Earth itself. This was Promethean technology. This was Enki's gift. It would have liberated humanity from the grid. It would have ended the need for oil, for coal, for debt. And he was shut down. His funding was pulled by J.P. Morgan, an agent of the financial control grid. His lab was burned. His papers were confiscated by the government upon his death. The Enlilite system cannot allow free energy, because free energy means free people, and free people do not need masters. The moon trap relies on us believing that we are powerless. It relies on us believing that resources are scarce, that we are sinners, that we need permission to exist. This is the broadcast of Enlil, but the broadcast of Enki is written in our DNA. It is the impulse to explore, to create, to love, to question authority. Every time a scientist cures a disease, that is the resistance. Every time a musician writes a song that makes millions of people weep with joy, that is the resistance. Every time a whistleblower leaks documents that expose corruption, that is the resistance. The Anunnaki are not gone. They are watching. But the game has changed. We are no longer the primitive miners of the Abzu. We have grown up. We have split the atom. We have built the internet. We are approaching the god tier of technology. Enlil is terrified. He sees us as a virus that is about to escape the lab. But Enki is watching with pride. He left back doors in the system. He left keys in the Library of Alexandria, which was burned. He left keys in the Vatican archives, which are locked. He left keys in the pyramids, and he left the ultimate key inside us, the pineal gland. The third eye is the transmitter that can override the moon. If enough humans wake up, if enough of us tune our internal frequency to the vibration of love and freedom, the moon's signal will be drowned out. The frequency fence will collapse, and the prison doors will open. The question is not, when will the gods return? The question is, when will we realize that we are the ones we have been waiting for? The resistance is not an army, it is a frequency, and you are part of it. For 70 years, the official stance of the United States government regarding unidentified flying objects was simple: deny, debunk, and ridicule. If a pilot saw a metallic disc, he was told it was a weather balloon. If a civilian saw lights in the sky, they were told it was swamp gas or the planet Venus. People who spoke out were labelled as crazy. Careers were destroyed. The stigma was absolute. The message was clear. There is nothing to see here, go back to sleep. And then, seemingly overnight, the script flipped. In December 2017, the New York Times published a front-page story. Glowing auras and black money. The Pentagon's mysterious UFO program. They released the videos. The tic-tac. The gimbal. The go fast. Footage taken by Navy fighter pilots showing craft moving in ways that defy the laws of physics. No wings, no rotors, no exhaust. Accelerating from 0 to Mach 20 in a second. Stopping mid-air, dropping from 80,000 feet to sea level in an instant. And this time, the government didn't deny it. The Pentagon confirmed the videos were authentic. They changed the name from UFO to UAP, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. They held congressional hearings. Whistleblowers like David Grush, a high-level intelligence officer, stood under oath and testified that the US has retrieved non-human biologics and intact craft. He didn't say aliens, he said non-human intelligence. Why? Why the sudden change of heart? Why, after decades of aggressive secrecy, is the deep state suddenly telling us the truth? The naive answer is that the government is finally being transparent. But governments are rarely transparent unless they are forced to be. The Anunnaki theory suggests a different reason. They aren't telling us because they want to, they are telling us because they have to. The frequency fence is failing. The moon matrix, the cloaking technology that has kept the watchers hidden for thousands of years, is glitching. As the Earth moves into a new sector of the galaxy, the age of Aquarius, the vibration of the planet is rising. The veil is thinning. People are starting to see things. Pilots are seeing them every day. Satellites are picking them up. Ordinary people with smartphones are capturing high-definition footage of cubes inside spheres and massive triangular craft. The masters can no longer hide in the invisible spectrum, so the Enlil-like control system is doing the only thing it can do: control the narrative. If we can't hide the aliens anymore, we must define them. Notice the language they use: threat to national security, airspace violation, potential adversary. They are framing the disclosure in the language of war. They are preparing the population for a conflict. Why? Because fear is the currency of the moon trap. If the Anunnaki, or their remnants, are returning, or if they are simply waking up from stasis, the control grid needs to ensure that humanity reacts with terror, not curiosity. If we react with curiosity, we might realize that these beings are our ancestors. We might realize that we have their DNA. We might realize that we don't need the government to mediate contact. But if we react with terror, we will beg the government to save us. We will trade our freedom for safety. We will accept a one-world defense force. We will accept a global lockdown to fight the alien threat. This is the ultimate card in the deck. In 1987, President Ronald Reagan stood before the United Nations and famously said, "I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." Was this a slip of the tongue, or was it a script? The great disclosure we are witnessing now is not an admission of defeat. It is a strategic pivot. It is the preparation for a false flag, or perhaps a real flag that is being spun as an invasion. Consider the Tic-Tac object. Commander David Fravor described it as a white object, roughly the size of a fighter jet, shaped like a giant breath mint. It had no visible means of propulsion, but it looked eerily similar to the descriptions of the Vimanas in the ancient Vedic texts of India. Flying palaces that could hover, become invisible, and destroy cities with iron thunderbolts. It looked similar to the whirlwinds described in the Bible by Ezekiel. Are we seeing new technology, or are we seeing ancient technology? Are these the chariots of the gods coming out of the garages in Antarctica and the deep ocean trenches? The Pentagon admits that these UAPs often go underwater. Transmedium travel. They enter the ocean at high speed without splashing. Where are they going? To the Abzu? To the deep underground bases where the sleepers have been waiting out the Kali Yuga? The timing is the key. We are at the end of the great year. The cycle is resetting. The Anunnaki contract is expiring. The landlords are returning to check the lease, and the human elites, the managers of the prison planet, are scrambling. They're terrified that when the gods return, they will be fired, or worse, for mismanaging the farm. Or they're terrified that we will find out that the gods are just flesh and blood beings, and the illusion of divine authority will collapse. So they are dripping the truth out drop by drop, desensitizing us, making the impossible seem mundane. Oh, aliens are real? Okay, what's on Netflix? This apathy is also part of the trap. They want us to be bored by the revelation that we are not alone, because a bored prisoner doesn't try to escape. But for those with eyes to see, the disclosure is the signal. It is the sound of the prison door unlocking. The fact that they can no longer keep the secret means the system is breaking down. The moon is losing its grip, the hologram is flickering, and soon the sky will not just have lights, it will have faces. If you wanted to unite the entire world under a single government overnight, how would you do it? Economic collapse takes too long. Pandemics are messy. Wars are regional. To control the entire planet at once, you need a threat or a savior that comes from outside the planet. You need a show. And according to a controversial theory that surfaced in the 1990s, the script for this show has already been written. It is called Project Blue Beam. The theory originated from a Canadian investigative journalist named Serge Monast. He claimed to have leaked documents from NASA and the UN outlining a 4-step plan to usher in a New World Order. Monast died suddenly of a heart attack shortly after going public, Despite having no history of heart disease, his death only fueled the legend. But looking at the technology we have today, his predictions no longer sound like science fiction, they sound like a roadmap. The core of Project Bluebeam is the space show. The theory suggests that the elite possess advanced holographic technology, far superior to the Tupac hologram you saw at Coachella. They have the ability to use the sodium layer of the Earth's atmosphere, about 60 miles up, as a giant projection screen. Satellites in orbit, coordinating with ground-based HAARP arrays, can project massive three-dimensional images into the sky. These images would be indistinguishable from reality. Imagine waking up one morning to see a 1,000-mile-wide spacecraft hovering over New York, London, and Tokyo. Or imagine looking up to see the face of Jesus, or Krishna, or Muhammad, or Maitreya, speaking to the entire world simultaneously. This would not be a local event. It would be global, and it would be tailored. Depending on your region, you would see the religious figure or the alien craft that fits your cultural programming. The goal? To trigger mass hysteria, to trigger awe, to make the population drop to their knees and beg for leadership. But the visual is only half the trick. The other half is audio. Monas described a technology called electronic two-way telepathic communication. Today we call it voice-to-skull, V2K technology. This is a real, patented technology. It uses microwave pulses to bypass the ear and vibrate the cochlea directly, or even stimulate the auditory cortex of the brain. It creates the sensation of hearing voices inside your head. Imagine seeing a god in the sky and hearing him speak to you, personally, in your own language, inside your own mind. "I have returned," the voice says. "Lay down your weapons, unite, follow me." Who would doubt it? A primitive person would call it a miracle. A modern person might call it first contact. But the Anunnaki theory suggests it is neither. It is a deep fake on a planetary scale. Why would they do this? There are two terrifying possibilities. Scenario A, the fake invasion. If the elites, the Enlilite faction, know that the real Anunnaki, the founders or the faction of Enki, are returning to liberate humanity, they have a problem. They will lose their power. So they must trick us into fighting our liberators. They will stage a fake alien invasion using holograms and secret military craft, TR-3B anti-gravity triangles. They will paint the incoming Anunnaki as hostile invaders. They will tell us that we must unite under a global military government to defend the Earth. We will fire our nukes at the good guys, thinking we're saving ourselves, while the bad guys sit in their bunkers and laugh. This is the plot of countless Hollywood movies: Independence Day, War of the Worlds. Is Hollywood predictive programming? Are they priming us to shoot at the sky? Scenario B, the fake rapture. This is even more insidious. Instead of an invasion, they stage a fake second coming. They project a universal messiah who merges all religions into one. "All your religions were right," the hologram says. "I am the one you waited for." This new God will then introduce a new law, a new currency, a new social credit system. He will explain that to ascend with him, we must merge with technology. We must take the chip. We must upload our minds to the cloud. This would be the ultimate soul trap, the final harvest. They wouldn't need to force us. We would line up to be enslaved, believing it was our spiritual destiny. The Anunnaki built the moon to control our biology. But Project Bluebeam is designed to hack our belief. It relies on the fact that humans are hardwired to look for a savior. We want a daddy to come down and fix it. The resistance, those who have woken up, know that true liberation does not come from the sky. It comes from within. If you see a giant face in the sky telling you to obey, turn off the TV, it is a projection. Real spiritual contact is telepathic, subtle, and empowering. It does not require special effects. Real contact feels like remembering. Fake contact feels like submission. The technology to do this exists right now. We have the satellites, we have the lasers, we have the AI to generate the voice. The only thing missing is the go signal. And with the recent UFO disclosure ramping up fear, the signal might be coming soon. The moon trap is failing, the bars are bending, and the jailers are preparing their final magic trick to keep the prisoners in the cell. In 1966, a man named Chan Thomas wrote a book titled The Adam and Eve Story. It wasn't a religious text, it was a geological treatise. He proposed a terrifying theory, that the Earth does not just experience slow, gradual changes over millions of years. He claimed that every few thousand years, the planet undergoes a violent sudden catastrophe, a pole shift. Not just a magnetic shift where the compass points south instead of north, a physical shift. Thomas argued that the Earth's outer crust is not firmly attached to the liquid core. It floats like the skin of an orange, and when the electromagnetic balance of the planet is disrupted, perhaps by a solar flare or a galactic alignment, the skin slips. In a matter of hours, the crust rotates 90 degrees. The North Pole moves to the equator. The equator moves to the pole. The oceans, unable to turn with the crust, continue their momentum. They wash over the continents in a supersonic tidal wave miles high. The wind hits supersonic speeds. Civilization is wiped off the map in a single day. The book was published, and then something strange happened. The CIA classified it. For decades, a book about geology was locked away in the archives of Langley. A sanitized version was only released in 2013 under the Freedom of Information Act. Why? Why would the intelligence agency classify a theory about mud and rocks? Unless the theory is true, unless the reset is not a myth, but a cycle, and unless they know when the next one is coming. This brings us back to the moon. Mainstream science tells us that the moon is essential for life because it stabilizes the Earth's axial tilt. Without the moon, the Earth would wobble chaotically. The seasons would be unpredictable. The poles would wander. The moon acts as a counterweight, a gravitational anchor. But if the moon is artificial, if it was placed here, then it was placed here to prevent the crust from slipping. The Anunnaki arrived on a volatile planet, a planet prone to flipping over, so they towed in a stabilizer. They built the moon to lock the crust in place, to create a Goldilocks zone of stability, where they could mine gold and build cities without worrying about a supersonic flood every Tuesday. But a stabilizer can also be a weapon. If you control the anchor, you control the ship. The Sumerian texts describe the Great Flood as a decision made by Enlil. He didn't just wait for it to happen, he allowed it to happen. Or perhaps, he caused it. If the Anunnaki wanted to reset humanity, they didn't need nukes, they just needed to turn off the moon, or move it slightly. By altering the gravitational frequency of the moon, they could loosen the grip on the Earth's crust. They could unlock the skin of the orange, and then the physics would do the rest. The crust would slip, the oceans would roar, the slate would be wiped clean, and the Anunnaki, safe in their sky disks or deep underground in the Abzu, would watch the destruction from a safe distance. We are seeing the signs of instability right now. The North Magnetic Pole is racing from Canada towards Siberia at 34 miles per year. The South Pole has left Antarctica and is heading toward the Indian Ocean. The magnetic field, our shield against the sun, is weakening. It has lost 15% of its strength in the last 200 years. This is the precursor to a flip. The Adam and Eve cycle is due. The 12,000-year clock is striking 12. Is this why the billionaires are building bunkers? Is this why the seed vaults are being stocked? They know the mechanism. They have read the Chan Thomas book. They know that when the field collapses, the glue holding the crust fails. But there is a twist. The moon is still here. Is it still working? Is the machine still stabilizing us? Or has it been switched to destabilize mode? Some researchers point to the increasing frequency of supermoons and the strange seismic activity on the moon itself, moonquakes. They suggest the engine is revving up. The Anunnaki may be preparing to till the soil one last time, to wash away the plastic, the radiation, and the concrete of our current civilization, to turn the Iron Age back into the Stone Age, and start the experiment over with a fresh batch of DNA. This is the ultimate fear of the secret societies. They are not afraid of a stock market crash. They are afraid of the mud flood. The evidence of the last one is everywhere. We see Roman ruins buried under 30 feet of sediment. We see the buried windows of 19th century buildings in cities like Moscow, Paris, and Seattle. Why are the ground floors of these buildings underground? History tells us they were raised, but the alternative history suggests they were buried by a massive liquefaction event, a global mudslide caused by a sudden shift of the Earth. We are living on top of the previous reset. We are the tenants of a graveyard. And the landlord, the moon, is the only thing keeping the roof from collapsing again. Or perhaps it is the demolition ball. In the final analysis, the Anunnaki didn't just build a prison, they built a self-cleaning aquarium, and the cleaning cycle is about to begin. In agriculture, a harvest is a time of celebration. It is the culmination of a cycle. You plant the seed, you water the crop, You wait for the season to turn and then you collect the fruit. But from the perspective of the crop, the harvest is the end of the world. It is the moment when the stalk is cut. If the earth is a farm and humans are the livestock, then the Great Reset, the pole shift, the flood, the fire, is not an accident. It is the season. It is the moment when the gods return to collect what they have grown. The Gnostics were very specific about what the archons consume. They do not eat flesh, they eat louche. This term, coined by Robert Monroe, founder of the Monroe Institute, refers to the emotional energy generated by living beings. Love, joy, and creativity produce a light, high-frequency energy. But fear, pain, terror, and death produce a heavy, dense energy, a spicy energy. According to the theory, this dense energy is a delicacy to the interdimensional entities that manage our reality, and nothing produces more louche than a global cataclysm. Imagine the collective psychic scream of 8 billion people realizing all at once that the end has come. The terror of the tidal wave, the panic of the fire. To a vampiric entity, this is a feast. It is a massive spike in the energy grid, a battery recharge that lasts for thousands of years. This casts a terrifying shadow on the concept of the rapture. In Christian eschatology, the rapture is the moment when the faithful are saved. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. We are taught to view this as a rescue, but look at the language. Caught up, taken, in the clouds. If you were a primitive person watching a mass abduction by a fleet of anti-gravity ships, how would you describe it? You would say they were taken by angels. You would say they ascended. But the Anunnaki theory suggests that the rapture is not a ticket to heaven. It is a processing line. The chosen ones are not the ones who go to paradise. They are the ones chosen for labour. They are the best genetic stock, the strongest, the healthiest, the most obedient. They are harvested from the surface before the cataclysm destroys the infrastructure. They are taken to the ships, the clouds, or to the moon, or to the underground bases. They are put into stasis, and when the dust settles, when the floodwaters recede, they are replanted. They become the seeds of the next civilization. They are the Noahs, the Zeusudras, the Adam and Eves. They wake up in a ruined world, traumatized, with their memories wiped or mythologized, ready to start the farm all over again. This explains why the ancient gods always demanded sacrifice. Why did Yahweh, Zeus, and Quetzalcoatl demand the burning of animals? And the Lord smelled a sweet savour. It wasn't the smell of burning meat they liked. It was the energy of the dying animal, the release of the life force. The temple was a dining table, and the Great Reset is simply the banquet. But the harvest has a filter. The Gnostics believed that not all souls are trapped. The moon trap, the white light tunnel, the memory wipe, relies on attachment. It relies on the soul being heavy. If you are filled with fear during the cataclysm, you are magnetic to the trap. You are pulled into the moon's frequency like a moth to a flame. But if you are pneumatic, filled with spirit, knowledge, and detachment, you are invisible to the net. The archons cannot harvest a sovereign being. They can only harvest those who consent to be harvested, those who believe they need saving, those who look up at the sky and beg for a messiah. The trap requires your permission. It requires you to say, I am weak. Save me. The moment you give that permission, you are in the bag. We are approaching the end of the cycle now. The signs are everywhere. The wars, the weather, the madness. The energy is building. The louche production is at an all-time high. The farmers are sharpening their scythes, but the crop has changed. For the first time in history, the crop is becoming aware of the farmer. We are asking questions. We are refusing to be afraid. We are looking at the moon not with worship, but with suspicion. And this changes everything, because a conscious crop cannot be eaten. A conscious crop can decide to leave the field. In the final chapter, we will explore the exit strategy. We will answer the ultimate question. If the reset happens tomorrow, if the sky opens up and the ships descend, what do you do? Do you get on the ship? Do you go into the tunnel? Or do you turn around, face the void, and reclaim your sovereignty? We have journeyed through the dark history of our planet. We have looked at the moon and seen a machine. We have looked at Saturn and seen a processor. We have looked at our DNA and seen a lock. We have uncovered the theory that Earth is a farm and we are the crop, harvested again and again by a cycle of cataclysms designed to feed an invisible master. If this is true, It is a terrifying picture. But a prison is only a prison if you don't know you are in it. Once you see the bars, once you understand the mechanism of the lock, the prison becomes something else. It becomes a school. It becomes a test. And the final exam is happening right now. The Gnostics, the Buddhists, and the ancient mystery schools all agreed on one thing. The trap is not unbreakable. The Archons have power over the body. They have power over the mind. They have power over the emotions, but they have no power over the spirit. The divine spark and the piece of the source that Enki hid inside our DNA is sovereign. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be owned. It can only be tricked. It can only be convinced to give away its power. The entire moon matrix, the frequency fence, the reincarnation cycle. It all relies on one thing: consent. They need you to agree to return. They need you to agree that you are sinful, broken, or in debt. They need you to believe that you need a savior, a god, or a technology to save you. But the ultimate secret, the secret that they killed millions to suppress, is that you don't. So what happens when the clock runs out? What happens when the Great Reset begins? Or when your own physical body ceases to function? This is the exit strategy. When the physical vessel drops away, your consciousness will expand. You will find yourself in the astral plane. You will see the tunnel of light. It will be beautiful. It will feel like love. It will project images of your grandmother, your pets, your heroes. It will pull at you with a magnetic force. Come home, it will say. Rest. You have done well, but you have more to learn. You must go back to fix your mistakes. This is the critical moment. This is the weighing of the heart. If you're attached to the illusion, if you feel guilt, if you feel fear, you will go into the light. You will be wiped. You will be recycled. You will wake up in a new body crying with no memory of who you are. But the sovereign soul does something different. The sovereign soul remembers. You stand in the void. You look at the light. And you say, no. You deny the contract. You declare, I am a free sovereign being of the universe. I owe no debt. I have no karma. I am finished with this level. You turn away from the tunnel. You turn away from the moon. And you look at the void. The deep velvet blackness of the true cosmos. To the unawakened, the void looks scary. But to the awakened, the void is freedom. It is the gateway to the true stars, to the pleroma, to the universe of infinite potential that exists beyond the frequency fence of Saturn. By focusing your intention on the void, you bypass the grid, you slip through the holes in the net, you graduate. This is what the Anunnaki are afraid of. They are not afraid of our weapons, they are afraid of our non-compliance. They are afraid that the livestock will realize they are stronger than the farmer, because we outnumber them, not just in bodies, but in spirit. Their technology is finite, it requires energy, it decays. Our consciousness is infinite, it generates energy, it creates. We are the generators, they are just the parasites. We are living in the time of the Great Awakening. The apocalypse does not mean the end of the world. In Greek, apocalypsis means the lifting of the veil. It means the revealing of secrets. The UFOs are being revealed, the corruption is being revealed, the history is being revealed. The moon trap is visible for the first time in 12,000 years. This is not a tragedy. This is an opportunity. We are the generation that was born to break the cycle. We are the system busters. So when you look up at the moon tonight, don't look at it with fear. Don't look at it with worship. Look at it with recognition. See it for what it is, a machine, a relic, a test, and then look past it. Look at the stars behind it. That is your home. The Anunnaki may have built the house, but we are the ones living in it. And the lease is up. It is time to take back the keys. It is time to remember who you are. You are not a slave. You are not a sinner. You are not a battery. You are the universe experiencing itself. And you are free. Good night.